What is a lighthouse? It is a tower with a bright light at the top. Located at an important or dangerous place. The main purpose of a lighthouse is to serve as a navigational aid and to warn of dangerous areas. Welcome to the EMS Lighthouse Project podcast. Illuminating the darkness of current EMS clinical practice with the bright light of science. Here are your hosts, Dr. Jeff Jarvis and Mike Verkest.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of EMS Lighthouse. I'm Dr. Jeff Jarvis.
Mike Verkest, and not just any episode.
No?
No.
Oh.
There's a couple special things about this episode.
What's special?
Well, number one,
Together
in real life.
in Texas. At the Casa Jarvis.
Yes.
So, Mike, what the hell are you doing at my house?
It's a good question. A lot of people have been asking me that over the last week or so.
My wife, my fish, my daughter.
Yeah, everybody's, the cat, maybe even. In town for the Formula One race at Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah.
So my son drove from Kentucky. I flew from Oregon. We are both driving back home next week. So, and we're hanging out with the Jarvis. Well, I mean, we're sleeping here.
Right.
But we're not really hanging out here.
No, because y'all are off watching the races.
Yeah, it's a busy time.
Yeah.
Watching races, concerts.
Yep.
Getting sunburnt.
And checking out Whataburger. Yeah. So,
yeah,
we had a little misunderstanding about the burger of Whata.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So we got to set it quickly though.
Yes.
We planned on going to Whataburger yesterday, and we pulled in, and then in the same parking lot, there was an In-N-Out. And I'm sorry, I'm going to In-N-Out.
Blasphemy.
I'm going to In-N-Out.
Blasphemy.
All day long. And so I said, well, we'll give it a try. And so we gave Whataburger a try on the way back from the track today. And it was, to quote my son, Caleb, I don't know if you're going to like this.
It was fine.
It was fine. It was fine. I think he said it was like a fresh Burger King.
So
I'm sorry.
I'm a little worried because
I'm sorry. There's a lot of people from Texas that watch this. I'm going to get killed.
I don't know what's up. It doesn't even have cheese. And I said, well, did you order it with cheese? He's like, what do you mean did I order it with cheese? So, yeah, you have to actually order it with what you want on it.
That's weird. Give me the cheeseburger.
I'll take Whataburger day in and day out.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it was fine. But yeah, so we've been enjoying ourselves here in Texas.
Yep.
Fall weather.
Yep.
88, 89 degrees.
This is fall.
It was fine.
So the other thing that is really special about this, number one, is Astros are going to the World Series again.
Good job for
Go
Astros.
Yep. Number two, I'm sitting here, I got the Aggie game on. And as of right now, fourth quarter, just into it, we are up 44-0 over the Gamecocks.
And Max Verstappen took pole position at the race today.
Is this a good thing?
That's my boy.
Oh, is this your guy?
That's my boy.
Okay.
That's my boy. So it's a bunch of winning all the way around.
Yeah. How about some science here? What
Episode 50.
50. 50.
50. That's a lot of episodes. Let's put it in perspective.
Yeah.
Ratu and I started second shift like 4 years ago, and I think we're on like 90-something. This is pretty new, and
we're catching up. We're catching up.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I just saw you too.
You did just see me. We were at the World of EMS.
We were. EMS World Expo in Atlanta. Couple things going on there. We did a lecture together. We did a best of EMS Lighthouse.
It was great, and the amount of preparation you did was amazing. I came in riding on his coattails as usual.
You did great.
But Mike, it was awesome. We had a great time together.
So much fun. People showed up.
They did.
It was great.
8 in the morning.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we also had the FlightbridgeED booth.
Indeed. Busy times.
So all of the FlightBridge folks were there. So we had Eric, we had Ashley, we had Emily.
We had Mark
you,
for a few
me.
days. Yep.
Let's see. We saw some FlightBridge alumni. I saw Dave Olvera.
Dave Olvera was there. Who else was there? I mean, just there was.
It was great.
It was a busy time.
Did some booth talks.
Yeah, we had our 10-minute talks. Those were awesome. Those will be coming out on YouTube probably in the next couple. They're all edited and ready to go.
Outstanding.
We're just going to be splitting them out one at a
So watch
time.
for the tubes of you.
Yep.
So the other thing we did, you had your podcast studio set up in the exhibit hall.
We did, and
we took advantage of it.
We did. You were hitting the road. You were grabbing people.
I was, yeah. So the other thing, so EMS Expo has a lot of things that go on with it. So they also do this conference in association with NAMT, National Association of EMTs. So I got to spend 2 or 3 days there before for NAMT. And they also do it in conjunction with the PCRF.
Prehospital Care Research Forum.
Yep. And they did the ISS, the International Scientific Symposium. And basically what that means is there was research there, poster presentations everywhere.
As far as you could see.
I went through, took a bunch of pictures, took some notes, and started inviting people to the booth to do interviews. It was great fun. We ended up getting 7 interviews. And there are at least 30 additional people I wanted to interview, but we just didn't have time.
Hard to make it all work. There's just not enough time.
Nope. But we managed to get 7 great interviews, some really interesting research, and that is more than is going to fit on one non-airway podcast.
Got to split it up.
We're going to break it up. We're going to break it up into 2. I think we're going to hit a couple of interviews here. Some folks that may be new to the EMS world. Nate Andrews is going to talk to us. I love this one. He is going to talk to us about attitudes about COVID vaccinations.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Kevin Collopy is going to do 2 interviews with us, one on Pocus and one on a randomized controlled trial he did. So I was about to say King Vision. Ketamine versus etomidate. I think we might move that one to the next episode.
That's perfect.
And then Leslie Brown with Air Methods is going to talk about whole blood versus pack cells.
Yep.
Then in episode 2, I have episode 2 written down here somewhere. Kevin is back with the ketamine versus etomidate. We have Sean McAllister, who is going to talk to us about some sepsis research that he did with all of the ESO doctors. And then we'll finish up with the man himself, Dave Page from PCRF. He's going to talk about some research he did and then put in a plug for some cool stuff.
Exactly.
So with that in mind,
shall we?
Yeah, let's, why don't we start it off with Nate Andrews.
All right, take us away, Nate.
So Nate Andrews, I was walking through the poster walk, and I saw your poster on vaccine attitudes. Why don't you tell us who you are and tell us what you found?
Absolutely. So my name is Nate Andrews. I'm a full-time paramedic over in Henderson County, North Carolina. I'm an adjunct instructor at Western Carolina University, as well as their sim lab coordinator. And along with my co-author Jackson Diesel, we did a research project examining the attitudes for the acceptance and motivations behind COVID vaccination among EMS professionals. So
talk about good timing.
Yeah,
really.
Absolutely. So we distributed this out. We developed a cross-sectional survey back in April and distributed it out to offices of EMS, primarily in North Carolina and Texas, and then also shared the link via popular social media outlets. Okay, and we received a little over 1,000 respondents that we included for data analysis.
That's
we included some just socio-demographic information on the respondents, as well as their personal and professional experience with COVID-19. And using multivariate logistical regressions, we calculated some odds ratios to compare levels of education, certification, age, and experience to see if that had made a difference on a person's decision to get the vaccine. And then using a Likert scale, we gave them motivations for whether they did or did not receive the vaccine and had them either agree or disagree with those motivations to see what drove them to get the vaccine. And then we also had a fill in the blank section so they could add in any comments or for their attitudes and beliefs if those weren't covered in the motivation section. So based on
let me ask you one
go
question.
Ahead.
Just your regression, you were looking at vaccinated versus unvaccinated and then looking at the characteristics that you're collecting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we had 1,017 respondents that we included for data analyses, and roughly 67% had received either all or at least the first dose of the vaccine at that time. So we had 1/3 that were unvaccinated. And then looking at age ranges, we found in comparison to the 25 to 34-year-old age demographic, as you went up in age groups, that they were more likely to receive the vaccine. So, for example, age range 55 to 64 were over 2.5 times as likely than the younger age, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
We found that paramedics, in comparison to paramedics, EMTs were 37% less likely to receive the vaccine.
Interesting.
And then our demographics showed that a good bit of our respondents had some form of advanced education beyond a high school diploma. But we found particularly for respondents with a bachelor's or master's degree, they were significantly more likely to receive the vaccine compared to their associate degree counterparts. So the big takeaways here were that age, education, and level of certification were statistically significant factors in predicting someone's acceptance to receive the COVID vaccine.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that seems to me to be tracking what we see in the general population. The older you are, perhaps the more at risk you feel like you are, the more likely you are to get vaccinated. And then, like we're seeing in so many different places, education is such a driver.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. If I heard you correctly, you looked at education in two ways. You looked at general education, and you also looked at certification.
Yes.
And those were both independently?
Yes.
Wow.
So we just had respondents put what their highest level of education were, all the way from a GED or high school diploma, all the way up to a doctorate.
Nice.
And had extensive levels there. And then we included EMR all the way up through paramedic level. Very few EMRs, so it's primarily EMTs. I'd say 62% of our respondents held a paramedic certification, and then roughly 18 or so % were at the EMT level.
So not exactly evenly distributed, but that probably matches the population of EMS providers.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Awesome.
And then when examining the motivations.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. You got some qualitative stuff here, too.
Absolutely. So for the respondents who stated that they had received the vaccine, the vast majority of them, like 94%, stated their primary reason for getting the vaccine was to protect their family and friends. And then some of the other high motivations were to protect themselves. They wanted to stop the spread of the virus, and the strong belief that the benefits of the vaccine outweighed the risks of getting the virus.
Nice.
And then there were a good bit that also supported, or stated that they had comorbidities, and so they were trying to protect themselves.
Sure.
Now, did you look at the reciprocal of that also? Reasons that people who were not vaccinated did not get vaccinated?
Absolutely. And the vast majority there, I think roughly 94% on that one, stated that there was not enough information on the long-term safety and efficacy of the vaccine. Many respondents expressed a belief that the vaccine was developed too quickly. They expressed skepticism in the information being reported by the CDC. And as for the fill-in-the-blank section, those themes just seem to be repeated among those personnel. And then conversely, we asked, okay, if you have not received the vaccine, do you plan or intend on receiving the vaccine in the future? And only 8% at that time stated they intended to in the future. So
that is sort of interesting. So what time period was it? Because the time period, I think, would be...
The time period is important.
Now, right?
Absolutely. So we ran this from April 28th through May 24th, so almost a month worth of responses collected. And that's one of our limitations is the fact that this was distributed and happened, well, one, when vaccines were only out for a limited period of time, so less than 6 months.
Right.
Yep.
And therefore, the information about the safety and long-term effects of the vaccine were kind of limited at that time.
Yeah.
And then since we have done the survey, we've seen just Delta boom across this country. And so it is possible that as new information comes out about the safety and efficacy of the vaccine, and with the severity of Delta, that people may have changed their minds or may change their mind in the future. And that's something to examine later on.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is the impact that actual approval as opposed to EUA authorization had. Just talking to patients, a lot of them express just outright confusion because of conflicting sources. So they're not very good at perhaps identifying what a legitimate scientific source is versus, somebody doing their research on Facebook. And when that research source is available, obviously.
Absolutely.
But a lot of people said, well, it's not approved. Maybe if it's approved, I'll change my mind. So it'd be interesting to see a repeat of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in the fill-in-the-blank section, a lot of respondents reported that it was not FDA approved, so they were not going to go for it.
But at the same time, they held a deep belief that they weren't getting the truth about the vaccines, right? So
Correct.
It's kind of it's like, which one do you want, right?
Correct.
Like, yeah. So
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So Nate, what do you think the big takeaways from your work are, and what implications does it have for us going forward?
Absolutely. So one of the bigger things to examine as we move forward, number one is identifying the best methods and the best practices to overcome vaccine hesitancy in EMS professionals, as well as adapting an environment that would encourage and support staff to go get the vaccine.
Yeah.
So there could possibly be some policy implications of this. For example, and we're starting to see this now in the current administration, that they are encouraging employers to provide paid sick leave for people to stay at home if they experience adverse side effects and are just feeling generally ill following getting the vaccine. And that's, I think, a good example of a supportive measure that we can take to encourage people to get it. Because in EMS, a lot of people can't afford to take time off, just for being sick from a vaccine. So
and recognition of that fact. So you living paycheck to paycheck, working 14 jobs, is going to dramatically decrease your compliance with, say, quarantine after an exposure.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, why get the vaccine and risk taking time off, losing time and money for the family when you can just, wear your PPE, take your best safety precautions when you're on job.
I think recognizing those really important limitations are important. So that's great work. I think the big follow-up we need to do is a quantitative analysis of the different types of noise-making things in an expo studio while recording.
Yes,
I think that would be
so
very
far
interesting.
we have heard metal saws and just generalized,
Some sort of
and
inflation
directly
thing?
behind you, Dr. Jarvis, I mean, there's a setup of a basketball tent.
I thought I heard a basketball. I'm like, surely that's not basketball.
There are foggers going on. There's people shooting basketball. So I would agree with
What's
that.
next? Cats and dogs living together?
Yes, soon enough.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen.
So the beauty of this is we are just capturing the excitement of EMS
Exactly.
Expo.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Awesome.
A lot of
Nate,
life.
thank you very much. Great
Absolutely.
work.
Thank you,
Really
Dr.
appreciate
Jarvis.
it.
Thank you for having me.
Great job. Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys.
And we're back. Nate, that was a great job. It's very timely because
it was.
While we were in the booth, even though you are a paramedic who is vaccinated,
Indeed.
as am I, you thought you had the COVID.
Yeah, so the morning of our talk, it was that Thursday morning, I texted you like 7 in the morning. I said, dude, I'm still getting over it. I said, I don't know what's going on, but all of a sudden I'm coughing. I got the hacky, and I'm like, I can't come to class.
Can't do it.
Can't come to class. And anyway, 30 minutes later, I had a rapid COVID test, which was good.
Yep. Thank you very much, Amy Jurasic. She leads our community health paramedic program.
Yep.
At Wilco, and just happened to, she doesn't go anywhere without a test. She said, I'll be happy to shove something up his nose.
Yep, so we literally met outside of EMS World, waited 15, 20 minutes, boom, it was negative. Figured it probably was. There had been the cold going through the household 2 weeks before. Yep. Never can be too safe.
Never ever.
So went in, did that, and so while we're having this interview, I was just like, oh my gosh, But anyway, had more negative COVID tests later the next day and PCRs and all that, but anyway. Bronchitis, people still get bronchitis.
From time to time.
Yep.
Do you know what would help even more if Amy could have whipped out an ultrasound and checked your ejection fraction?
That would have been good. I mean, I think it would have been fine.
Probably.
I would have liked to have looked at my sinuses and my lungs, but...
I don't know that ultrasound will do that.
Well, I know you can look at your eyeballs. I've rubbed one on my eyeballs.
That's pretty good.
I've done that before.
I think we should switch now to Kevin Collopy talking about the accuracy of EMS Pocus.
Sounds good.
Let's do it. Kevin, hit it. Kevin Collopy, thank you so much for joining us. I was going to say sitting down with us, but clearly we are standing. We're here at the FlightbridgeED booth at EMS Expo. You had some very interesting research at the PCRF Research Forum, and I'd like to talk to you about it. Let's start off with your poster and your research on Pocus, point of care ultrasound. Can you tell us what you were looking at and what you found?
Thanks. So our goal in medicine and practice is always to find more effective tools that actually impact patient outcomes. Obviously, Pocus has been a very popular topic, and there's been a very little and limited literature published on it, particularly in the out-of-hospital setting. And my team at Airlink Vitalink, our medical director is a trauma surgeon and critical care physician, and so he's very interested in what we can do that'll shorten time to OR. So Pocus is a very natural item for us to look at with the goal of shortening time. But if I'm going to invest a ton of money into training team members, investing in the equipment and putting it out there, I need to know that there's going to be a good return on investment, aka improved patient outcomes. Yeah, so really the first question at hand is, can we reliably perform it in the field? And since we don't have any standardized curriculum for it out there, I know there's been some attempts, there's people who have put information out there, which is wonderful, but it's not a national standard yet.
Sure, everybody's making their own course.
Right.
Right. So where do we...
They may be great, but they're all different.
Right, and we have different lengths of times, we've got different pieces. We're looking at different pieces of information on ultrasound. There's tons of different devices. It's what can we do? Can we interpret it accurately? And what happens when we compare it to the trauma team's ultrasound? So what we did, we actually we were loaned several point-of-care ultrasound devices by a company called Ulight. So Ulight was the ultrasound that we used, and we enrolled a convenient sample of trauma patients, and over a 2.5, almost 3-year period, our pre-hospital teams in flight or in transport were asked to perform strictly fast exams. So we didn't do lung sliding, we didn't look for anything else, just straight fast exams. They documented their findings on a study enrollment form, and then they blinded and did not share any of those results with the trauma team. So all they would say upon arrival is, we've enrolled them in the FAST study. And then the trauma team, primarily the residents, would perform a secondary fast exam, and we went back and Will, my medical director, compared the results. Do we match? Is one positive? Are they both positive?
Excellent.
So it was blinded in a sense that the second team wasn't influenced by the first results, but it was clearly open that we enrolled them.
Yep.
And so we ended up enrolling 180 patients, and during the study period, we really only had 17 results, or 17 positives. Positive patients. So we found we were reasonable at saying it's negative.
No, I'm sorry, 17 positives by whose ultrasound?
17 patients that were confirmed positive in the ER.
Got it, okay.
And we missed a portion of those, and I've tried to get the picture up here so we could talk about it, but it's a little bit on an angle, so I'm trying to look at it on the side. So we had 3 patients out of the 180 that we said were positive, that the ER said, yes, that's positive as well. We had, looking at here, 14 patients that we said were positive that the ER said was negative. Okay. So our false positives there. And then we had 4 patients that we said were negative that the ER said was positive. So 7 that ended up being positive and needed intervention, 17 that we called positive, only 3 of which were positive.
Okay,
So
it sounds like you have just populated a 2x2 contingency table, which is screaming for sensitivity, specificity, and positive and negative predictive value.
It is, and so we ran all of those statistics, and I'm just trying to look at here on the side.
Yeah, you bet.
And so my positive predictive value, understandably, wasn't that great, was only 0.366, so 34%.
Okay.
Which isn't terrible, and it'd be really easy to look at this and say, so pre-hospital providers aren't good at ultrasound, we shouldn't use it. Well, we have to start somewhere.
That would be a conclusion.
It is, but if you look back and say the first 12 leads, what was our accuracy? What was our reliability of accurately interpreting 12 leads in 2006?
Even in some cases in 2021.
Sure.
Well, that's another podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what we really concluded is the training system we developed is inadequate. And that's really our takeaway and conclusion, that it can be done. We've shown you can pick up positive cases in the field.
Right.
There's going to be a question later on of what do you do with that information. That's not for this study.
Right.
Yeah.
But what we said is a 6-hour training where you have lecture and then practice, so we incorporated both of those in simulation together, is inadequate for reliable pre-hospital interpretation of ultrasound.
Yep.
So we got a baseline minimum that's not good. That's how I'm trying to look at this data and say, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm not saying it's not reliable. We're not saying we are unreliable at performing it in the field. It's 6 hours of training doesn't get us there. So it's going to have to be something greater.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of common sense, but we need some data to prove those conclusions.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so I think it's first off, thank you very much for the research. I think it's a great clinical question. And I think I agree with your conclusions. I think what that's telling us is nothing about the technology or its ability to identify disease. It's that perhaps the training isn't there yet. The one, since my job is to pick nits, the one nit I would pick, most of your residents in the trauma team, I would imagine, are EM residents, and usually it's a first or second year doing the ultrasound. So you might want to look, when you go back and do this again, is whether that's really a gold standard, because I can tell you our residents miss a lot too. So you got learners being compared to learners. But the nice thing is all research is a trade-off, and that's the data you had.
Right, and so our residents who are performing it were our 3rd and 4th year surgical residents.
Okay.
So it was actually the trauma team. We don't yet have an EM residency at our hospital.
Okay.
We hopefully someday soon, I'd knock on wood, but we've got enough echoing here as it is.
I was going to say, yeah, you don't need to knock on wood when you have a freight train coming right through the exhibit hall.
Mere feet of where we are. Yeah.
I'm afraid to look over my shoulder and see what that is.
But I think your point is well taken, is we were using it and comparing it to residents because that's what was happening in our system, and we have the outcomes to look at afterwards. We can go back and look at it. There were a lot of other challenges we had in that study. My biggest challenge was I was trying to blind the data with a very progressive flight team who wants to do something. And the pushback I got was, why would I run a test if I can't do anything with it anyway? It was hard to look long term. Sure. And the patients that were probably most likely to be positive, they were focused on things like blood, airway, other tools, and saying, I've already activated a trauma 1. What addition is this going to add? Yeah. And the goal is, if we can get those same patients positive fast exam, we're giving blood, they're hypotensive, checklist, we meet in the OR. Yeah. That's the end game, but we need more data to get there.
Yeah, you're right. That's a completely different conversation. The big thing surgeons want is they want to be able to get some operative guidance, not just they need to go to the OR, but why and where the bleeding is. And I'm not a surgeon, so I'm probably not the best person to talk about that. Yeah. But you're right, I think that's a subsequent study. So thank you very much for that great work.
Thanks.
Yeah, excellent job. Very interesting, and I love that. All right, again, thanks, Kevin, for stopping by the booth twice, no less.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was some interesting stuff in there, and I was especially curious about the ongoing education, right? Was there just the initial training of that, and then that was it? And it sounded like there was some work to do on that sort of moving forward. But yeah, I think just like anything, we need that spaced repetition of training, initial rollout, and we just got to keep hitting it, right? Because it's all new stuff. So
look at the educator in you coming out.
I know.
Spaced repetition.
Can't help it.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and that was his big conclusion, is 6 hours just wasn't enough.
It's not enough.
You know what I think we should talk about? Let's talk about the accuracy of EMD determinants and whether we should go lights and sirens to a
God, I would love that.
Let's do it. Chris Gage, bring that North Carolina accent. Tell us what we got.
Well, we are back in the booth, you can tell, because we have the beautiful, soothing ambient sounds of EMS Expo here.
Exactly.
Chris Gage, tell us who you are, what you're doing, and tell us about your paper. I'll just give you a hint. I saw the topic of his paper and got really excited, and I said, I have got to talk to this guy. Okay. Tell us what you're looking at and who you are.
Great to have me here. My name's Chris Gage. I'm a paramedic in North Carolina. Currently, I teach as I'm an assistant professor of EMS at the community college that I teach at. I've been there teaching since 2005, full-time since 2014.
Where's that?
It's Thomasville, North Carolina. It's called Davidson Davie Community College.
Awesome.
So we've got about, 100 students that go through a year, a couple different programs we do, all the way through paramedic. But worked as ALS provider since 2003, flight, medic, stuff like that. So my paper really got me interested because, when you go, get dispatched to a call and it's emergency traffic and you're fighting your way through and you get there and you're just like,
What?
Why?
Really?
Were we talking about the same thing?
Right. I mean, like, who told you?
That.
Who told the dispatcher that this was an emergency?
Right.
So I finished my master's degree program at Western Carolina back in December. So my project, I had to come up with a research, and this was an easy research because it was, something that I was definitely passionate about.
And something that every EMT paramedic just knows exactly what's going on.
Yes.
And it's important.
When I gave the poster presentation yesterday, I asked the questions, anybody ever been emergency traffic to a call and felt like you didn't need to? And everybody's, oh, yeah. So everybody's, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
So pretty much we took the ESO data from 2019, all the 18 plus, they had to be transported to a hospital, and it had to be a 911 call. Those were the inclusion. And we were really trying to look at to see, were the EMD protocols dispatching ambulances appropriately to where they emergency or non-emergency as far as transports to the hospital. So it's comparing. So if you got dispatched, we put them in either you got dispatch lights and sirens or you did not get dispatch lights and sirens. So even lights and sirens was if you got downgraded, upgraded, those were included at any time. At any time where you were routine, no lights and sirens, period. So those are the two categories. And then we looked at were you transported at any time, lights and sirens, were you not transported any time, lights and sirens. We compared the two. So pretty much the data came out that we did a rock curve, so to see how often you were going to be dispatched. So 75% of all EMS dispatches with those criteria are dispatched emergency traffic. So 3 out of 4, you're getting emergency traffic regardless. So it turned out that about 84% of the dispatches of emergency traffic were routine to the hospital. So they were never emergent to the hospital. And then,
so you go lights and sirens to the scene, get there, nothing burger, no lights and sirens.
No lights
or
and
it's
sirens.
a horribly mangled person, but you don't need to go to lights and sirens.
Exactly. Originally I wanted to look at refusals, stuff like that, but it was really hard to calculate what would the refusal for. I mean, a diabetic patient could be a good, emergency traffic to the scene and a refusal. So, it was hard to calculate that out. And then, so they had really good turnout as far as true emergencies, so dispatched emergency traffic and emergency traffic at the hospital, but that's kind of expected since 3 out of 4 were emergency traffic anyway. And then they were really good at not emergency, so negative predictor, not emergency, they routined you out, you routine to the hospital. It was the emergency traffic to the scene and non-emergent to the hospital that was transported was like 84, 85%.
So let's go back to that. You said, first off, you threw out a word there, rock curve.
It was the receiver operator
here?
Characteristics curve. So this is, and actually Jackson Diesel, I give him credit because he's the one that showed me what it even meant.
What did you find in terms of positive predictive value and negative predictive value?
So positive predictive value means that when the EMD protocol sends the ambulance out emergency traffic, that it was a true emergency predicted by the ambulance transporting emergency traffic to the hospital. That was about 15 to 16% of the time. But when it looked at negative predictive value, they were able to predict that it was non-emergency by non-emergency transport to the hospital 97% of the time.
So what we're saying here is that an EMD code that suggests lights and sirens, which ultimately is each agency's decision.
Correct.
But if it says go lights and sirens, that's not a very good predictor at all of whether you will go lights and sirens to the hospital. On the other hand, if they say don't go lights and sirens, it's not dangerous, you can go without lights and sirens. That was pretty accurate for predicting no badness.
Correct.
Perfect. So why do we care about lights and sirens use? So what? I mean, they're kind of fun. I used to like doing it. Now I'm just old and can't hear anything, but I used to like doing it. Why do we care? Why are you trying to pry our cold dead fingers from our
first intubation,
from our federal sirens?
Right.
I know.
Well, we look at what are lights and sirens. What's the bad part of lights and sirens? So the bad part for EMS agencies, fire, law enforcement, is motor vehicle collisions, wrecks, pedestrian strokes, throwing someone around in the back of the ambulance. So it's dangerous. The study that I looked at was from NHTSA 1992 to 2011, showed that on average about 33 people were killed a year, and I think it was about 2,000 people were injured a year in just ambulance transportation and going to the hospital. So they didn't break it up whether it was going to be to the scene or to the hospital.
Yep.
But there's a lot of agencies that are pushing away from even transporting emergency traffic to the hospital.
Yep.
You know, unless they have hemorrhage control problems or airway bleeding. So, I mean, there's a lot of proof. Your study itself showed that going emergency traffic to a scene really didn't show a lot of evidence, and you were actually treating people with emergency conditions.
Yep. Yeah, only 7% of the time you go lights and sirens did you do something sort of paramedic-y.
Correct.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The most recent paper, Watanabe's paper from the Dell Medical Center in Austin with Lawrence Brown, they looked at this and said, how often do we see collisions? And is red light and sirens a predictor? And it turns out it's associated with more collisions. That's how EMTs and paramedics get hurt and killed, and we probably ought to do less of it. So a little foreshadowing of things that you may see coming. There is a national quality improvement effort underway right now. Lots of folks are involved in it. I'm involved in it through NIMSQA, the National Association EMS Quality Alliance, and what we're looking at is how can we improve something nationwide, and we picked decreasing red light and sirens use to the scene because that's low-hanging fruit.
Right.
So your research, not shocking, it's showing about the same as mine because miracle,
That's
it's the same data set.
Turns out it is what it is.
my gosh.
We also looked at NIMSIS, and what we're seeing, there are some challenges with the way we collect this data, but roughly 86%, when you look at all calls, 911 to the scene, we can make that lower. We don't know what the right number is. Research like yours helps us identify when it's appropriate, but we need to decrease that. And that's what this QI initiative is going to do. So great contributions. Give us a tweet. If you had to send out one tweet that summarizes your research, what would it be?
EMS protocols are not always predictive of a caller's true or a patient's true emergency, and they need to be improved to help the safety and lives of others in the ambulance and outside on the way to and front.
I mean, our fundamental job here is to make sure everybody who shows up for work can go home.
Right.
This is a great way to do it.
Safety number one.
Absolutely, I like it.
Yeah.
Man, it was great meeting you. Thank you so much for your work, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. That was a great talk. I love the accent, and I am telling you, this red lights and sirens, it's getting some, I mean, obviously we know the data. You know the data. We just heard some more data. There was a piece in the, New York Times or the Wall Street Journal?
Yes, it was New York Times.
New York Times talking about it. I literally just got concerned from one of our crews just the other day about what are we doing? How is this stuff coded? So anyway, a lot of work in progress, and we'll just see how it goes.
I really am. I think I mentioned it in the interview. There is going to be a national quality improvement campaign.
And they're actually recruiting right now.
Yes, outstanding. Look for all the normal channels for more information about this. You'll see it from NIMSQA. You'll see it from a lot of other organizations. I know that First Watch and Mike Tagman, very influential with this. Great stuff. Great stuff. Well, I think we got 3 solid research interviews here. I think we need to hit a couple things on our checklist and then get out, close out episode 50.
It's been an awesome one.
You know, it's a little disappointing because the timing of your visit didn't quite work out. We had teased a little bit in one of our previous episodes.
Indeed, we did.
That I was going to take you to my local brewery and we were going to shoot an episode just like you were to shoot at the McMinimans. Well, that didn't work out timing-wise, but I am drinking from the Barking Armadillo, our local brewery. What am I drinking here? This is...
Oh, what is that?
This is Wet Hop American Pale Ale. It's a summer ale. It's very nice. Very nice. And Mike, what are you drinking?
I have a little bit of Weller here. Thank you for picking some of that up before I got here.
Absolutely.
It's perfect. I can't believe you could find it. But anyway, really good.
So, Mikey, why don't you get us out of here?
Let's get out of here. On behalf of Dr. Jeff Jarvis, Mike Verkest, you've been watching and listening to the EMS Lighthouse Project podcast. We are a proud member of the FlightbridgeED Podcast Network and
a Fire Dog production.
We will see you again. Thanks for joining us for episode 50.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
You've been listening to the EMS Lighthouse Project podcast, a proud member of the FlightbridgeED podcast family and a Fire Dog production. Visit FlightbridgeED.com for more information.